From being reluctant to working with children to spending his days helping young people map their educational futures, life has a funny way of surprising us. And JCU Outreach Officer Jake Sylvester is here to share the unexpected career opportunities he unlocked with his psychology degree. Professionally Psyched is the podcast that brings you cutting-edge psychology research and real-world insights from our psych community of clinicians, researchers, and educators alike. In our special alumni spotlights, we chat to graduates from our psychology degree programs about how their skills learned in the classroom have become powerful tools supporting diverse career journeys and successes. Hi everyone and welcome to Professionally Psyched. I'm Jessica Muller, PhD candidate in Public Health at James Cook University, and before we get started we'd like to acknowledge the custodians of the land on which we record, and for me today that's the Bindal and Wulgurukaba peoples. And I pay my respects to elders past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and cultures from wherever you may be tuning in from across the country. In this Alumni Spotlight episode we join Dr. Amanda Krause as she sits down with Jake Sylvester, a JCU psychology graduate whose career has zigzagged from child protection to his current role as JCU Outreach Officer, advocating for tertiary education. His journey proves that the versatility of a psychology degree can lead to career paths and changes you might never have considered. So grab your headphones and get ready to get professionally psyched about the exciting, winding roads a psychology degree can take you down. Enjoy.
Jake, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. To get started, would you be able to introduce yourself?
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me, Amanda. So my name's Jake Sylvester. So I'm a graduate of James Cook University, where I graduated with a Bachelor of Psychological Science in 2018. Since graduating, I've tried a number of different career paths. So I've worked in child protection, I've worked for the NDIS, I've been a local laws officer, and that's brought me to my current role at James Cook University again as an outreach officer.
You've had a bit of a journey there. Could you tell us about maybe which of those has had the most impact on where you're focusing your career these days?
I'd probably go with when I first graduated. I always said when I was a current student, I didn't want to work with children. I didn't think I could be very objective. I think it'd be a hard area to study and then to work in. And then ultimately ended up working as a child safety officer, which is a bit ironic. It's a very rewarding job path and I got a lot of very good experience. It's also very emotionally taxing. So even though it gave me a lot of skills, I use that as a stepping stone into some other different career paths.
And how did that bring you to your current role as an outreach officer?
Well, predominantly as an outreach officer, I go out to communities, I go out to schools, and I advocate for tertiary education. So I suppose working as a child safety officer, I see a big gap of when young people don't get the education or the skills they necessarily need, and it leaves a big gap later in life. So I guess I've always been passionate about helping young people, or anyone in general, really, to get where they want to be.
Yeah. Can you walk us through what your day-to-day looks like in your current role?
My day-to-day is trying to connect with anyone I can at schools or in the community, finding out, I suppose, the gaps in their knowledge. I guess, I suppose, a typical day for me, maybe to go into a school. I might be working with year fives one day, and then the next day I might be working for year 12s. The following week, I could be working for an NGO. It could be in Townsville. Sometimes I'm at the Mount Isa. I could be out west in Hilden, as south as Serena. So I like my role because it gets me to travel out a little bit and I get to help as many people as possible.
And if you're in a school working with year 5 or year 12s, what are you doing? What do
Well,
you do with the
obviously, it
students?
depends on the age group. So year fives is more aspirational work. They're very young. It's very common answers. What do you want to do when you grow up? I want to be a TikToker. I want to be a sports star, an actor, which is amazing ambitions. But I've got to come along and say, okay, well, do you know how you're going to get to that goal? Or maybe if you do want to be a sports star, what happens if you hurt yourself and you can no longer do that? What else do you want to do? If you're interested in being a famous footy player, and that doesn't pan out, do you want to do sports and exercise? Do you want to do physiotherapy? Do you want to be a personality on the TV? So it's about expanding their options. So when it's young, it's more aspirational. And as they get a bit older, it's more capacity building, what are the prerequisites, what are the pathways, and how you're actually going to achieve that goal.
What do you use from your psychology background in helping you do this work?
Well, I think psychology gives you a very strong foundation because it's a very wide study area. Like I especially loved all the different electives when I was doing psychology. So not only are you doing psychology 101, like I really enjoyed doing anthropology, sociology, criminology, all the ologies. At the start, I wasn't a big fan of stats, but once you actually graduate and then you're looking for the research papers, having that foundation, understanding, interpreting that data is really useful. So I like how broad the degree is, whether you want to go into clinical, you want to be a counselor, or whether you want to stay in research, or like me, you do a complete 180 and you go in a different direction. I think it opens a lot of doors.
So I love how you said there that you drew on lots of different ologies. Love that. How do you find that breadth has helped you, I suppose, navigate working with students who have so many different career aspirations?
Well, I think because I wasn't entirely sure when I started my psych degree what I wanted to do. Like, I think at the start, I wanted to go into clinical, I wanted to be a practitioner. And as I studied, it changed. And just through the student life cycle, I changed what I want to do. So when I go into the community or I'm speaking with students, I'm like, it's okay to not know what you want to do. And I think a lot of psychology, especially first years, and I was guilty, you pigeonhole yourself of what you want to do. But as you progress through the years, that changes. So, as I mentioned earlier, I never wanted to work with children. Now, going into my postgraduate life, like I predominantly work with children, and it's the area I really enjoy.
Yeah, I think that's so important to know that you don't have to know what you're going to do, and also that it may change what you might want to do. Was there any subject or experience you had that sort of flipped your thinking for you?
Not necessarily one subject in particular, but I think I drew little bits about them all. So there might be an area where I studied that I didn't particularly enjoy, but that meant something to me. It meant, okay, well, maybe I don't want to go into sociology. I do want to stick to more the mainstream psychology or like anthropology, somewhere I found fascinating because I love learning about other cultures. So even though I didn't go to that avenue, now I probably have more appreciation for traveling. So I took something into my personal life just from going through my study area.
Mm. And I want to circle back to something you were saying earlier where you were mentioning sort of reading research. So is that part of figuring out what you do and what you implement in your role today?
I don't do too much on data unless I'm collecting feedback, but I think just more in general, like stats is probably the subject I enjoyed the least. I think a lot of psychology students will resonate with that, but it wasn't until I completed my three stats core subjects, and then I ended up doing psychometrics as well, is I found out how useful it was. So even now, just when I'm reading a journal article, sometimes you can tell the more legitimate ones, you go, oh, it's not a very big sample size, or as you're going through the data, you're like, I think they're manipulating it a little bit, or correlation doesn't mean causation. So I definitely see the benefit of now, even though I didn't go into that research pathway. Like,
Yeah, so you're saying then that there is a benefit, even though you were thinking that's sort of a research pathway, but you can see that it's having an influence now.
100%. I think all the subjects you do, whether they're a core subject or an elective, will navigate you in your post-career. And the psychology is a very flexible one. So if you're not sure about a particular study area, try something that you didn't think you'd be interested in. Who knows? You may do one of those electives and it might change your trajectory.
Yeah. Do you have any other tips or tricks and advice for current students who maybe, like you, might not really gravitate towards some of those core subjects, but they have to take them for their
Mm.
degree?
I'd just say you may not see the benefit of it right now, but just try your best. It might open doors down the track. My advice to key students is something that I didn't do very well as a student. It would be networking. Go to all the networking nights, speak to your lecturers, spend time with your colleagues, because when you graduate, they may become your colleagues or they may know of a job prospect. Like I only got my first job in child protection because one of my friends was already working there. So I'd say network and make sure your LinkedIn profile is up to date and make sure you've got a good resume. So when you graduate and you're competing with, 150 graduates that, you're ahead of the game.
Definitely important to build that network. And I suppose in our discipline and with people outside of the discipline, like yourself, I can see that in your role as an outreach officer, you'd have to be liaising with a lot of different disciplines, I suppose.
Exactly. I don't think having those relationships is really important. And I speak in the classroom to the students as like, don't be afraid of change or uncertainty. I like to think things will work out at the end if you just keep persevering. And even though I didn't end up necessarily in the psychology field, I drew on a lot of the experience I learned along the way and I can implement them into my current role.
Yeah. Speaking of uncertainty, is there a current big issue in sort of the industry that you think that our future psychology graduates might be able to tackle?
I think it's important to understand what the Bachelor of Psychological Science degree you, you can get into or you can get a postgrad, because I speak to a lot of year 12 students, and it's a little bit shocking how very little of them understand the actual bachelor's degree. So I think I'd just be really open with them and say, look, make sure you understand which degree you're getting into. And when I do a lot of the career education, that's not just specifically to psychology. I think a lot of students last minute pick degrees and they're not necessarily prepared. So I want to make sure they've got a rough idea what they want to do and where the path's going to take them. And then I think if psychology is not for you, it's okay to swap to something else or to swap back. We get a lot of social work students or med students or students from a lot of disciplines that come into psychology because they tried something else, they didn't like it. So I would just say just follow your passion and don't get pigeonholed to any one discipline, would be my advice, not necessarily to psychology students, but everyone in general.
I think that's really important. Like you, I went into my undergraduate degree not really certain what I was going to do and tried out different things. But I think you raised a really important point there of try it. And if it's not for you, try something else. You can always come back and you can always craft that journey through the learning, and you're not going to lose time because you can use that learning in different areas as well.
And you can always come back to it. Like I initially went into the field because I was studying for a while. I was part-time. So I felt like I was at university for a very long time. And after about 6 years, I was like, you know what, I want to go get some direct work experience. I can always come back and do some postgrad later. And which that option is still there available. I'm constantly thinking, do I want to come back and do my master's in psychology or do a master's in social work? But I wanted to get some direct work experience and that's okay. Like
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on the work experience.
I think when I say work experience, because I think the Bachelor of Psychological Science is very theory heavy. So I feel like when I left, I was quite a good researcher. I was very good at writing essays, but I didn't necessarily feel like I had the hands-on practice. Like we touch on it a lot in a lot of different subjects, and like there's some really good counseling subjects, but then I felt very fresh, very new. So when in the field, I think I was very strong academically and not theory based, but I had no hands-on experience. So going straight into child protection, that was a real eye opener, and very quickly you get that hands-on experience. And getting that hands-on experience, I felt like I could link it straight back to what I was learning at uni.
Yeah, could you tell me a little bit more about how that first experience in child protection sort of brought to life some of what you had learned in the classroom, but gave you that hands-on experience?
Well, I think initially I wanted to be a counselor, and it's very well to do the mock sessions when you're doing your counseling subject. But until you're in a one-on-one room and something goes wrong, that theory doesn't mean much at all. Like the first time I had I suppose, an unruly client who gave me a bit of spray, or they were reacting in a way differently than I thought they would. You realize you don't actually have that direct experience and you got to think on your feet. But after a while, it becomes so much more comfortable. And then when you get used to being in that environment, then you can go back to the theory and say, oh, that's why that person reacted that way. Or maybe I said something that triggered them, or maybe it's a trauma response. So it's connecting the experience to what you learned. And I think that moving forward, it made me a stronger practitioner.
Yeah, certainly would have.
Yeah, it's hard because I feel like I did take a complete different turn. Like I went straight from psych to social work, from social work to disability, from disability to I was a local laws officer, I was a provincial park ranger, and then from park ranger, I've come back to education. So I feel like I've been a bit all over my shop in my career path.
I think actually a lot of the people that I've been speaking to have had these windy journeys, which I think are really important to talk about because I think, like you said before, some of our students come in, I'm going to do this, and think it's a straight line.
And I think it's great from a point of view that the bachelor's degree opens a lot of doors. Like I feel like I've never had an issue getting employed. And I think it's the versatility of the bachelor of psychology degree.
I think that's a great point to end on, that it is so versatile and opens up doors. So, Jake, thank you for joining me on the podcast today.
No worries, anytime. Hope the listeners get something out of it.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Professionally Psyched. This podcast wouldn't be possible without the ongoing support of our Psych community. If you'd like to show your support or if you want us to cover anything on the pod, reach out via our emails, and don't forget you can listen to full episodes on Spotify.